I wasn't looking for a reason to doubt her. I never had before. If anything, I had spent years convincing myself that my wife was exactly who she claimed to be, devoted, honest, and transparent. But that afternoon, when Sophia walked through the front door with that carefully composed smile, I knew something was off. "Hey, babe," she said, placing her purse on the console table like she always did. Traffic was insane today. I had to stop by that new cafe Vanessa told me about, needed a breather. It was a simple statement, one that wouldn't have meant much on any other day. But my mind caught on something. Earlier, when I'd called her, she had said she was at the salon, getting her hair done. I glanced at her. Her hair was exactly the same, not a single strand different. "Which cafe?" I asked casually, watching her reaction. She hesitated. Not visibly, not dramatically, just a flicker of something in her eyes before she smiled again, this time wider. "That new one on Birch Street. The one with the lavender lattes. You wouldn't like it. Too many plants everywhere." Birch Street. That was on the other side of town from the salon. I nodded, trying to act as if I was buying into her lie. Maybe she had simply changed her plans. Maybe she had forgotten what she told me earlier. But even as I told myself those things, I felt it in my gut, the unmistakable tug of doubt. I didn't push it. Not then. Instead, I waited until she went upstairs for her usual post-work shower. Her purse was right there. My heart pounded as I reached for it, feeling the weight of the decision. I wasn't a snooper. I wasn't the kind of husband who invaded privacy. But something told me I had to look. The moment my fingers brushed against the crisp edge of a thick envelope, I knew I had found something I wasn't supposed to. I pulled it out carefully. My stomach clenched as I unfolded the document inside. A deed to a property I had never heard of. My name wasn't on it. I read and reread it, my hands tightening around the paper. The purchase had been made months ago, and Sophia was the sole owner. I felt a rush of disbelief, confusion, and something far worse, betrayal. When had she bought property without telling me? Why had she hidden it? I barely had time to process before I heard the shower turn off. My hands moved on autopilot, sliding the document back into her bag just as she came down the stairs, her hair damp, her robe tied loosely at the waist. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, tilting her head as she passed me. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile. "Just a long day at work." She kissed my cheek, but I barely felt it. My mind was already spinning, trying to make sense of the first crack in the perfect life I thought we had. And I had a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. I sat in my car long after leaving the house, the engine idling, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The deed to that unknown property was burned into my mind, a silent accusation staring back at me. Sophia had always been good with words, too good. I had seen her talk her way out of speeding tickets, charm our neighbors into lending us things we never returned, and convince her boss to give her an unearned promotion. She had this way of twisting reality, of making people see only what she wanted them to see. But I had never thought she would use that skill on me. Yet, as I sat there, replaying years of our marriage, small moments I had brushed off suddenly felt different. The way she used to shut down my questions about our finances. "You worry too much, Nathan. I've got it handled." The way she always controlled the conversations when I brought up the future. "Let's not overthink things. Just trust me." The way she had subtly alienated me from my own family. "Your mother never really liked me, you know. And Mark? He's just jealous of what we have." Mark, my best friend. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. Not really. The last time we had sat down for a drink, he had leaned in close and said, "You ever feel like she's playing chess and you're just a piece on the board?" I had laughed it off, but the words haunted me now. Maybe Mark had seen something I hadn't. I gritted my teeth and finally shifted into drive, heading toward the only place that made sense, Mark's house. If there was anyone who would give me an unfiltered opinion, it was him. Mark lived in a modest, cluttered apartment on the west side of town. The moment he opened the door, his expression turned into a smirk. Well, look who decided to visit." "I need to talk," I said, pushing past him. Mark shut the door behind me. "That's serious, huh?" I sat on his worn-out couch, running a hand through my hair. I think Sophia's been lying to me. More than just little things. His smirk faded. Go on. I hesitated for only a second before spilling everything. The lie about the cafe, the property deed I had found, the strange feeling that I had been blind to something for years. Mark listened in silence, his fingers tapping against his beer bottle. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. I hate to say I told you so. I scowled. Don't. But I told you so, he finished with a shrug. Sophia's got a way of making people doubt their own eyes. And you, my friend, have been under her spell for a long time. I don't need a lecture, I snapped. Mark leaned forward. Then what do you need? I sighed, rubbing my temples. I need to know if I'm crazy, if I'm making a big deal out of nothing. Mark studied me for a long moment. Then, he stood, walked over to a drawer, and pulled out a stack of papers. He tossed them onto the coffee table. That's some of the stuff I dug up a year ago when I thought something was off. Bank transactions, property lookups, weird inconsistencies. I stared at him. You investigated my wife? Mark didn't even flinch. Yeah, because I care about you. And because you were too blind to see it yourself. I reached for the papers with shaking hands. My eyes scanned through them, and with every page, my stomach twisted tighter. She had been moving money around. She had accounts I never knew about. She had financial ties to people I didn't recognize. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was something deeper, something darker. My mind reeled as I tried to process the weight of what I was looking at. Mark sat back, his expression grim. So, what are you gonna do? I swallowed hard. I don't know. Because for the first time in my marriage, I realized that I didn't really know the woman I had vowed to spend my life with. And that terrified me more than anything. I barely slept that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while Sophia breathed evenly beside me, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. My mind kept circling back to the evidence Mark had shown me. Bank transactions I had never authorized, accounts I had never heard of, and financial ties that made no sense. It wasn't just the property deed. That was only the tip of the iceberg. The woman lying beside me, the woman I had trusted, had been living a life behind my back. But why? That question gnawed at me more than anything else. Was she planning to leave? If so, why hadn't she done it already? What was she waiting for? Or was this something else? Something bigger? By the time Sophia's alarm went off, I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to accuse her outright. Not yet. If she had spent years lying to me, then she had perfected the art of deception. She would have an explanation ready, a carefully crafted lie to make me doubt my own instincts. No, I needed proof. Real proof. So, as she kissed me goodbye that morning, as she gave me that same radiant smile I had fallen in love with years ago, I forced myself to smile back. I pretended everything was fine. But the moment she walked out the door, I grabbed my keys and followed her. Sophia's car moved smoothly through the city streets, and I kept a careful distance behind her. I had never done anything like this before, never followed anyone, never played detective in my own marriage. But something told me I had to. She wasn't going to the cafe she had mentioned yesterday. She wasn't going to the salon either. Instead, she drove across town to a small, upscale restaurant. It was one of those places with frosted windows and white tablecloths, somewhere you'd take an important client or a secret meeting. I parked a block away and walked toward the restaurant, keeping my head low. I couldn't go inside, not without being seen, but I found a spot near the entrance where I had a clear view of the glass door. Minutes later, she walked in, and she wasn't alone. A woman followed behind her, Vanessa. I felt my stomach twist. Vanessa was Sophia's closest friend, the kind of friend who always seemed to be around but never got too involved in our marriage. She was friendly to me, but not overly so. She and Sophia had their own little world, and I had never questioned it. But as I watched them sit at a corner table, leaning in close, their heads almost touching, I realized something. This wasn't a casual lunch. This was a secret. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see Vanessa's body language, tense, stiff. Sophia, on the other hand, was calm, in control. She spoke in slow, measured words, while Vanessa kept glancing around nervously. Something was wrong. I pulled out my phone and snapped a few pictures through the window. I didn't know what I was going to do with them yet, but I needed to document everything. Then, I waited. 30 minutes passed. Then 40. Finally, Vanessa stood up first, looking shaken. Sophia stayed seated, watching as her friend hurried out of the restaurant. That was enough for me. I turned away and walked back to my car, my mind racing. Vanessa knew something, and I needed to find out what it was. That night, I played my part again. I pretended nothing had changed, acted like I hadn't seen her meeting with Vanessa, like I hadn't spent my entire day following her. But inside, I was planning my next move. After Sophia fell asleep, I slipped out of bed and walked quietly to the living room, pulling out my laptop. I had never felt the need to dig into my wife's past before, but now, I had no choice. I searched for property records first, trying to find any other properties she might own. Nothing came up under her full name. But then I searched for variations. Sophia Carter. S. Carter. S. L. Carter. That's when I found it. Another property. Not under her name, but under a shell company. One that was registered under an address I didn't recognize. But the name of the company sent a chill down my spine. It was the same last name as Vanessa's maiden name. That couldn't be a coincidence. My wife had been hiding assets under a business linked to her best friend. And suddenly, I wasn't just questioning my wife. I was questioning Vanessa too. I closed the laptop and leaned back, my heart pounding. This was bigger than a lie. This was a scheme. And I was about to find out just how deep it went. I barely made it through the next day at work. My mind was everywhere but on the emails I was supposed to respond to, the meetings I was meant to attend, or the reports that had been sitting on my desk since morning. All I could think about was the hidden property, the secret company, and the look on Vanessa's face during that lunch with Sophia. She had been nervous, uncomfortable, almost afraid. And Sophia? She had been in control, like she always was. It was a long game she had been playing, and I had been the fool watching from the sidelines, believing every lie she fed me. Not anymore. By the time I left the office, I had a plan. Vanessa was the weak link. If anyone was going to break, it would be her. I found her just as she was leaving her apartment, keys in hand, about to unlock her car. She jumped when she saw me, clutching her chest. "Nathan, Jesus, you scared me." I didn't smile. I didn't ease the tension. I just took a slow step closer. "We need to talk." Vanessa hesitated. "Look, if this is about Sophia." "It is," I cut in. "And I think you know why." Her hand tightened around her car keys. She glanced around the parking lot, as if she was afraid someone might be watching. That only confirmed what I already suspected. She was hiding something. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, too quickly. I tilted my head, studying her. "Then why are you shaking?" She stiffened. I saw you yesterday," I continued. "At the restaurant. I saw the way you looked at her. You weren't having lunch, Vanessa. That was a meeting. And you were scared." Vanessa exhaled sharply and ran a hand through her hair. "I can't." "You can." I took another step closer. "And you will." She swallowed hard, her eyes darting away. I could see the internal struggle. She was debating whether to run, to lie, to deny. But then, something in her cracked. She exhaled sharply and muttered, "Not here." We got into my car, and I drove us to a quiet coffee shop on the outskirts of town. The moment we sat down, Vanessa folded her arms on the table and let out a deep breath. "She's been planning this for a long time," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I leaned forward. "Planning what?" Vanessa shook her head. "I don't know everything, Nathan. I swear. She doesn't tell me everything. But I know she's been hiding money for years. Moving it around. Buying properties under fake business names. It started small, but then she got ambitious." I clenched my fists under the table. "Ambitious how?" Vanessa hesitated, then finally said, "She did the same thing to her ex?" A chill ran through me. "Her ex?" I repeated. Vanessa nodded. "Before you, there was someone else. A man she was engaged to. He thought she was everything, just like you did. But when he started asking too many questions, when he got too close to the truth, he disappeared." I felt my stomach drop. "You mean he left?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I believed it. Vanessa shook her head slowly. I mean, no one knows where he went. His family tried to find him, but Sophia said he left her, ran off without a word. The police didn't dig too deep. No body, no crime, right? I swallowed hard. She took everything from him, Nathan. Everything. His savings, his investments. When he was gone, she cashed out and started over. The walls of the cafe suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. I had been living with a woman capable of that? Sleeping beside her? Loving her? Vanessa leaned in, her expression urgent. Listen to me. She knows you're starting to ask questions. She's going to try and get ahead of this. You have to be careful. I forced myself to breathe, to think. Why are you telling me this now? Vanessa hesitated. Because I can't do this anymore. I should have told you sooner, but I was afraid of what she'd do to me. What do you mean? Vanessa looked away. She has ways of making people disappear. I sat back, my heart hammering. This was bigger than I had thought. It wasn't just about hidden money. It was about survival. And if Sophia thought I was onto her, then I was already in danger. I stood. Thanks, Vanessa. But I need one more thing from you. Vanessa's eyes widened. What? Proof. If I was going to take Sophia down, I needed something solid, something undeniable. And I had a feeling Vanessa had exactly what I needed. The drive home felt like it lasted a lifetime. Every stoplight, every turn, every second that passed was another moment closer to walking into a house with a woman I no longer recognized. Vanessa's words replayed in my head like a broken record. She took everything from him, Nathan, everything. And when he got too close to the truth, he disappeared. Had I been blind all along? Had I convinced myself that my marriage was built on love when, in reality, I was just another one of Sophia's projects? A man to be used, manipulated, and discarded when the time was right? I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Not this time. I had asked Vanessa for proof, and she had promised she would get it to me. But I needed to be smart. Sophia was watching me, even if she didn't know it yet. She was always watching, always one step ahead. If I made one wrong move, I had no doubt she'd try to turn the tables on me. Or worse. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my mind was already forming the next step. I had to act normal, had to make her believe I was still the trusting husband she had spent years molding. I walked through the door, forcing my breathing to steady, my heart to slow down. The scent of something cooking drifted from the kitchen. Rosemary, garlic, something rich and inviting. It would have been comforting once. Now, it felt like a trap. Sophia stood by the stove, her back to me, stirring something in a pot. Hey, you're home late, she said over her shoulder. Her voice was light, casual, like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't spent years stealing from me. Like she hadn't ruined another man's life before mine. Yeah, I said, setting my keys down on the counter. Long day. She turned then, her sharp blue eyes scanning me like she was reading my thoughts. Everything okay? I forced a smile. Of course. Just exhausted. Her head tilted slightly, but she didn't press. Instead, she turned back to the stove, lifting the lid off the pot. I made your favorite, beef stew. Thought you could use something warm? I swallowed the sudden nausea rising in my throat. There was something chilling about the way she played this role so effortlessly. The doting wife, the loving partner, the woman who cared for me. But now I knew it was all an illusion. I moved toward the fridge, opening it just to have something to do. You see Vanessa today? I asked casually. For just a fraction of a second, her stirring paused. But it was there. That hesitation. Yeah, she said, too smoothly. Just a quick lunch. Nothing important. I closed the fridge, turning to face her fully. Funny, because I saw you. She stilled. What? I saw you at the restaurant, I said, watching her reaction carefully. You and Vanessa. And you didn't look like two friends having lunch. She let out a soft laugh, shaking her head as she turned off the stove. Nathan, are you following me now? The way she said it, light, teasing, amused, was meant to make me feel stupid, meant to make me second-guess myself. I didn't take the bait. I was in the area, I lied. Saw you through the window. Vanessa looked nervous. Sophia turned, leaning against the counter, arms crossed over her chest. She's going through some things. Like what? She shrugged. Personal stuff. It's not my place to say. I nodded slowly, acting like I accepted that answer. And the company? The property in her name? This time, she didn't flinch. She just smiled. Are you looking through my things now, Nathan? Her tone was still playful, but her eyes had sharpened. That's not very trusting of you. I don't think trust is something we should talk about, I said. Not when I'm finding bank accounts I never knew existed, or properties I was never told about. She sighed, pushing off the counter. Nathan, you're overreacting. That was her tactic, always. Twist the story, turn the suspicion back on me. Make me feel like I was the crazy one. But not this time. Tell me the truth, I said. Right now. No lies. No games. Just tell me. For a moment, she just looked at me, her expression unreadable. Then she walked toward me slowly, placing a hand on my chest. Nathan, she whispered, I love you. It was a distraction, a misdirection. I gently pulled her hand away. Tell me. Something flickered in her gaze. Annoyance, frustration. Then, just like that, she sighed. Fine. If you must know, the property is an investment. Something separate from our joint finances. That's all. And the bank accounts? I've been moving some money around, she admitted, giving me that same sweet smile. For security reasons. You know how unpredictable the economy is. It was a half-truth. I could hear it in the way she said it. But it was a well-crafted one. Sophia knew I wouldn't be able to prove anything right now. She was giving me just enough to make me question myself, to make me hesitate. I had to play the game. So I exhaled, rubbing a hand over my face like I was exhausted. You should have told me, I muttered. She reached up, brushing her fingers through my hair. I didn't want to stress you. I know you've been overwhelmed lately. Another manipulation. I forced myself to nod. Just don't keep things from me, okay? She kissed my cheek. Of course not. I let her turn away, let her believe she had smoothed things over. But I knew better now. I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I was looking for a way out. And when I found it, she would never see it coming. I woke up to the sound of rain tapping against the window. It was still dark outside, the kind of early morning where the world felt eerily silent, like it was holding its breath. I turned my head slightly, my eyes landing on Sophia beside me. She was still asleep, her breathing soft and even, her face relaxed. For a moment, I almost believed everything was normal, but it wasn't. Last night had been a battle of words, a subtle chess match where she had tried, once again, to shift the blame, to make me question myself. And for years, it had worked. For years, she had woven lies around me so tightly that I never thought to pull at the threads. Now I was pulling, and I could feel the entire web unraveling. I quietly got out of bed, careful not to wake her. Moving through the house, I made my way to my office. I shut the door behind me, locked it, and powered on my laptop. The first thing I did was check my email. Vanessa had come through. There, in my inbox, was a message from her with a subject line that made my stomach tighten. You need to see this. I clicked it open. Attached were several files, and as I skimmed through them, my pulse quickened. Bank transfers, wire transactions, contracts with names I didn't recognize. She had been siphoning money for years. From me. From accounts I thought we shared. From investments I thought were for our future. And then there was another document. I opened it, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. It was a life insurance policy, with my name on it, and Sophia as the sole beneficiary. My blood ran cold. The numbers next to the payout amount were staggering. She had taken out the policy 5 years ago, right after we got married. Quietly, discreetly, and it had been increased twice since then. The most recent adjustment? 2 months ago. My mind raced. Was this just a precaution? A financial safety net? Or was it something worse? Had she been planning something? Had I been living with someone who wasn't just a liar, but something far more dangerous? A chill ran through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. Think. Breathe. I needed more than just documents. I needed a plan. I closed the files and reached for my phone, my hands steady even though my heart was pounding. I dialed Mark's number. It rang twice before he picked up, his voice groggy. "Man, do you know what time it is?" "I need to see you," I said, keeping my voice low. "Now." That woke him up. "What happened?" "I'll explain when I get there." Half an hour later, I was sitting in Mark's apartment, staring at the coffee table where I had laid out printed copies of everything Vanessa had sent me. Mark ran a hand down his face as he looked at the files. "Jesus, Nathan." I exhaled slowly. "She's been playing me this whole time." "She's been robbing you this whole time," Mark corrected. "And this?" He pointed to the life insurance policy. "This is more than just some offshore account scheme. This is calculated. This is a setup." I leaned forward, rubbing my hands together. "I don't know what to do." "You need to get out." I looked at him. "And let her win? Let her keep everything?" Mark shook his head. "No, but you need to be smart about this. Sophia is dangerous, Nathan. If she's willing to forge documents, to move money behind your back, he tapped the life insurance policy. "Do this, then you can't just walk into the house and call her out." I already knew that. Sophia didn't fight battles she wasn't sure she would win. And if I confronted her now, she would twist everything. Make me look like the bad guy. She had already tried to gaslight me once. She would do it again. Worse, she would turn others against me. If she could manipulate me for years, what would stop her from manipulating the people around us? "I need proof," I said. "More than this. Something undeniable." Mark nodded. "You said Vanessa helped you with this. Does she know more?" I hesitated. "She knows something." "Then you need to talk to her again." I exhaled sharply. "She's scared." "Good," Mark said. "Fear makes people talk." I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. "Be careful," Mark added. "You think you're playing chess, but Sophia? She's playing something else entirely. And if you're not careful, you're not just gonna lose money, you're gonna lose everything." His words lingered in my head as I drove home. The game wasn't over. But the pieces were finally moving, and I was done playing by her rules. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the weight of everything I had learned pressed down on me like an iron hand around my throat. Sophia was more than just a liar. She was a master manipulator. She had been stealing from me, gaslighting me, and now, with that life insurance policy, I had to consider something even more terrifying. Was I in danger? I sat in my car for a few moments, gripping the steering wheel, my pulse pounding in my ears. I needed to be careful. I needed to be smarter than her. With a steadying breath, I grabbed my phone and pulled up Vanessa's number. She had already risked a lot by sending me those documents, and I had a feeling she was holding back even more. The phone rang 3 times before she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nathan?" I leaned back in my seat. "We need to talk." There was a pause. "I already told you everything I could." "No," I said, my voice firm. "You told me what you thought was enough. But Vanessa, I think you know more. And I think you're scared to say it." She exhaled sharply on the other end. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand," I pressed. "She took money from me, she had assets, and now I find out she took out a massive life insurance policy on me? Vanessa, I need to know. Do you think she would try to hurt me?" Silence. A long, suffocating silence. Then, finally, she spoke. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I know what happened to the last guy." I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" Her voice was shaky. "I told you Sophia was engaged before, right? That he disappeared? That wasn't the whole story." I sat up straighter. "Tell me everything." Another pause. Then, with a deep breath, she began. "His name was Daniel. They had been together for years. Everyone thought they were perfect. But right before the wedding, he started questioning things, just like you are now. He found out about the hidden money, the fake business deals, the properties under other names. He confronted her. 2 weeks later, he was gone." I clenched my jaw. "Gone as in?" "Gone, Nathan. Just vanished. No one ever saw him again. No goodbye notes. No phone calls. His family reported him missing, but there was nothing to go on. And Sophia? She played the devastated fiancée like a pro. Cried on cue, told everyone he had cold feet, that he must have run off with another woman. My stomach turned. That's not even the worst part, Vanessa continued. A few months later, when the police finally stopped looking for him, guess what happened? I didn't answer. I already knew. She cashed out his accounts, Vanessa said. All of them. Drained everything he had. Sold off the assets in his name. And then, just like that, she moved on. I let out a slow, shaky breath. She had done this before. And I was next. You're telling me she got away with it? I asked, my voice tighter than I intended. She's careful, Nathan. She doesn't leave evidence. That's why you need to stop pushing. If she even suspects that you're onto her. She already suspects. I cut in. Vanessa went quiet. I exhaled, my mind racing. I had proof of her financial manipulation, her hidden money, but none of it mattered if I didn't have something that would truly expose her. And more importantly, something that would protect me before she decided I was no longer useful. I needed leverage. Something she wouldn't see coming. I straightened. Do you have anything? Anything from before Daniel disappeared? Vanessa hesitated. There were rumors. A police report that never led anywhere. Some bruises he had before he went missing, but no one ever connected them to her. I clenched my fists. I needed that report. Find it, I said. And anything else you can. Vanessa sighed. Nathan, Please, I said, my voice quieter. I don't know how much time I have. That seemed to break whatever resistance she had left. Okay, she whispered. I'll try. I hung up and sat in the darkness of my car, my breathing uneven. This was real. This wasn't just some elaborate scam anymore. It wasn't just about money. It was about survival. I walked into the house, forcing myself to act normal. If she knew that I had spoken to Vanessa again, if she knew how close I was to uncovering everything, I had no doubt she would escalate things. As I stepped into the living room, Sophia looked up from the couch, smiling as she sipped her wine. You're late, she said. Mark again? I nodded, loosening my tie. Yeah, needed to clear my head. Her eyes studied me for a second too long, like she was trying to decide if she believed me. Finally, she smiled. Good. You've been stressed lately. I don't like seeing you like that. I let out a small laugh, playing my part. Yeah, well, life has a way of piling things on. She patted the couch beside her. Come sit with me. I hesitated for only a second before moving toward her. I needed to keep this illusion going. She couldn't know that I was already working on an escape plan. As I sat down, she curled into me, resting her head on my shoulder. And for the first time since we got married, I felt nothing. No warmth. No love. Just a cold realization that this woman I had once built a life with, was nothing more than a predator. And I was her next target. But not for long. I sat in the living room, pretending to watch the show Sophia had put on. The dim glow of the TV flickered against the walls, casting shadows that felt too real, too alive. But my mind wasn't on the screen. It was elsewhere, tangled in the storm of everything I had learned. I was married to a woman who had done this before. She had drained another man of everything he had, then made him disappear when he got too close to the truth. And now, I had stumbled onto the same path. I didn't doubt for a second that she was already laying the groundwork for my downfall. I had seen the signs. The way she was subtly shifting the narrative, planting seeds of doubt about my mental state. The casual mentions of stress, of paranoia, of me not being myself lately. She was preparing for something, and I needed to be ahead of her. As Sophia leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder, I forced myself to stay still, to play my role. She sighed softly, her fingers tracing patterns on my arm. You've been so tense lately, she murmured. I wish you'd talk to me. I smiled, keeping my voice light. I'm fine, just work stuff. She turned her head slightly, watching me. You sure? I nodded. Of course. You worry too much. Her lips curled into a small smile. I just want you to be okay. I swallowed back the bitterness rising in my throat. She wanted me to be okay, for now, until she was ready to get rid of me. I let her settle back against me. My body relaxed even as my mind raced. I needed to move fast. I needed to secure my proof before she made her next move. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I left for work like usual, kissing Sophia goodbye as if everything was normal. But I didn't go to the office. I went to see Mark. He opened the door to his apartment, rubbing his eyes. Jesus, Nathan, you ever hear of calling first? I pushed past him, closing the door behind me. We don't have time for that. He studied me for a moment, then sighed. All right, tell me what's going on. I handed him the folder of documents Vanessa had given me. I need this to be airtight. Can you help me? Mark sat down, flipping through the pages. His eyes darkened as he read. She's been setting you up for months. I nodded. I know. He set the folder down. What's the plan? I took a deep breath. We build our own case against her. She's been moving money, hiding assets. I need to make sure she can't spin this on me. And Vanessa said she's looking for that old police report. If we can connect her to Daniel's disappearance, she won't just lose money, Mark finished. She'll lose everything. I nodded. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was the one in control. We spent the next few hours digging deeper. Mark helped me organize everything. Bank records, email correspondences, hidden transactions. We needed this to be solid. If Sophia tried to ruin me, I needed to be able to expose her before she got the chance. By noon, Vanessa called. I found the report, she said, her voice hushed. I gripped the phone tighter. And? She exhaled. It's not much, but it's something. A few people reported hearing a fight between Sophia and Daniel the night before he disappeared. And, she hesitated, then continued, there was a 911 call from his number. It lasted less than 10 seconds. Just heavy breathing, then the line cut off. A chill ran down my spine. And the police did nothing? I asked. There was no body, no crime scene, Vanessa said. And Sophia played the grieving fiancé perfectly. I clenched my jaw. Send me everything you have. By the time I got home, I felt more prepared than I had in weeks. I had evidence. I had witnesses. And I had a plan. I was going to turn the tables on Sophia before she had a chance to destroy me. When I walked inside, she was in the kitchen, humming as she poured herself a glass of wine. She turned when she heard me, smiling. You're home early, she said. I smiled back. Slow day at work. She watched me for a second, then set down her glass. Nathan, I've been thinking. I raised an eyebrow. About what? She walked toward me, reaching for my hands. Us. I feel like we've been distant lately. Maybe we need a break, just the two of us. A little getaway. I stared at her. A getaway. Alone. Away from anyone who might be able to help me. I forced my expression to stay neutral. That sounds nice. Her smile widened. Really? Yeah, I said. We should talk about it later. She nodded, pressing a soft kiss to my cheek. Good. I'll start looking at places. I watched as she walked away, sipping her wine, already planning whatever trap she was setting. But she had no idea. This time, she wasn't the one in control. I was. And when the moment was right, I was going to bring her entire world crashing down. Sophia thought she was winning. She moved around the house with an air of quiet confidence, her every action smooth, controlled, effortless, like someone who believed she had already secured her victory. I could see it in the way she watched me, waiting for signs of doubt, for hesitation, for an opening she could use. But I wasn't giving her one. I played my role perfectly, giving her no reason to suspect that I knew exactly what she was planning. The fake smiles, the soft reassurances, the I love yous that felt like glass in my throat. I did it all because I needed her to believe I was still under her spell. She had suggested a getaway. I knew what that meant. It wasn't about fixing our marriage, and it definitely wasn't about reconnecting. No, this was a setup. A way to isolate me, to cut me off from any help, to make whatever came next seem natural. An accident. A tragic disappearance. And then, like clockwork, she would cash out my accounts, claim the life insurance, and move on, just like she had done before. But she had no idea that I was already 3 steps ahead. That night, I received a message from Vanessa. She filed something against you. I overheard her on the phone. My fingers tightened around my phone. Sophia was moving fast. Faster than I expected. I called Vanessa immediately. What did she say? She was talking to someone. I couldn't hear everything, but it sounded like she was making a report. Something about your mental state, how you've been acting erratic. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. She's setting up a narrative. She's laying the groundwork, Vanessa confirmed. If anything happens to you, she wants people to believe it was self-inflicted. Maybe stress from work, a breakdown, something believable. I clenched my jaw. She was getting desperate. She must have sensed that I wasn't as easy to manipulate anymore. That meant I needed to act now. I opened my laptop and pulled up everything I had gathered. Bank transfers, fake accounts, the hidden properties, the life insurance policy, even the old police report about Daniel's disappearance. It was all there. Now, I just needed to use it. The next morning, I made a call to my father. Anthony Carter was not a man who took kindly to being deceived. He had always been skeptical of Sophia, though he never voiced it directly. There's something about her, he had once told me years ago. She's too perfect, too polished. People like that? They're dangerous. I had brushed him off back then, but now I wished I had listened. When he picked up, his voice was sharp. Nathan, everything all right? No, I admitted. I need your help. A pause. Then, tell me everything. I laid it all out, the hidden money, the fake company, the life insurance policy, and what Vanessa had told me about Daniel. My father stayed silent through most of it, but when I finished, his response was immediate. She's trying to destroy you. I know, I said. That's why I need to stop her before she gets the chance. My father exhaled. What do you need from me? Legal backing, I said. I need to secure my assets before she drains them. And I need someone who can push this into the right hands. People who won't ignore it. I'll handle it, he said without hesitation. I felt a weight lift from my chest. My father wasn't just a man with resources. He was a man who knew how to get things done. If there was anyone who could help me turn the tables, it was him. By the time I ended the call, I had the beginnings of a real plan. That evening, I walked into the house with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in weeks. Sophia was in the kitchen, wine glass in hand, scrolling through something on her phone. She glanced up when she saw me, her smile soft, sweet, practiced. How was your day? She asked. I smiled back. Productive. She studied me, tilting her head slightly. You seem different. I shrugged, moving to pour myself a drink. I've been thinking a lot. About what? I turned to face her, leaning against the counter. About us. Her lips parted slightly, just enough to feign surprise. Oh. I took a slow sip of my drink. I think we need to talk. She set her phone down. I agree. She thought this was her moment. She thought I was about to fall into whatever trap she had set, to let her steer the conversation, manipulate me into doubting myself. But she had no idea what was coming. I placed my glass down carefully, meeting her eyes. I know everything, Sophia. She didn't react immediately. She was too good for that. Instead, she blinked once, twice, then tilted her head. What do you mean? I exhaled, shaking my head. Come on, let's not do this. Not now. She was quiet for a beat. Then, she laughed. A soft, airy sound. Nathan, you're being dramatic. I chuckled, nodding. Maybe. Or maybe I finally stopped ignoring the truth. Sophia crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. And what truth is that? That you've been stealing from me. That you've been hiding money, lying about properties, moving things into fake companies. I leaned in slightly. That you took out a life insurance policy in my name. Her jaw tensed. I saw it, the flicker of something behind her eyes. She knew. She knew I wasn't playing dumb anymore. But she wasn't going to fold easily. Instead, she sighed, shaking her head. Nathan, you've been under so much stress lately. I think. I held up a hand. Don't. She stopped. I smirked. I have proof, Sophia. Documents. Bank statements. Recorded conversations. I took another step forward, watching the color drain from her face. I've been ahead of you this entire time. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. What do you want? I exhaled slowly. I want you to admit what you've done. Sophia didn't move, didn't breathe. And then Finally, she smiled. A slow, calculated smile. All right, she said. Let's talk. I nodded. Because this was the final game, and I was about to win. I sat across from Sophia, my hands steady on the table, my breathing even. Everything in me told me this was a moment I had to control. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and she would find a way to twist the truth, to manipulate, to turn this into something else entirely. But not this time. This time, I wasn't reacting to her. I was leading the game. She tilted her head slightly, studying me with those sharp, calculating eyes. You think you've won, don't you? I exhaled slowly. I know I have. She smirked, swirling the wine in her glass before taking a slow sip. Nathan, you have no idea what you're talking about. You've been overworked, paranoid. This, she gestured lazily at the space between us, is nothing more than you letting your stress get the best of you. I shook my head. That would have worked before, Sophia. Maybe even a few weeks ago. But not anymore. She sighed dramatically, setting her glass down. Fine. Entertain me. What exactly do you think you've figured out? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. I know about the money. The offshore accounts, the fake businesses, the property you've been buying in Vanessa's name. I let that sit for a moment before continuing. I know about the life insurance policy, the one you took out on me without my knowledge. The same one you increased 2 months ago. She blinked once, but didn't react beyond that. I could see the gears turning in her head, calculating how to spin this. I didn't give her the chance. And I know about Daniel. That got her. Her fingers tightened slightly around the stem of her wine glass. Barely noticeable, but I caught it. The first crack in her mask. I smiled. You were engaged once before. A man who trusted you, who built a life with you, who, just like me, started asking questions. And then, one day, he was gone. No trace, no goodbye. Just gone. Sophia's lips pressed into a thin line. You took his money, just like you've been taking mine. And when he got too close to figuring out the truth, he disappeared. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Then she leaned back, crossing her legs, her expression unreadable. Do you have proof? I chuckled, shaking my head. Of course I do. Police reports, financial records, statements from people who heard you and Daniel fighting the night before he went missing. I took out my phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward her. You want to see the email I sent to my lawyer this morning? The one with all the attached documents? The one that's already been backed up to multiple locations? Her gaze flickered to the screen. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, finally, she exhaled softly and smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was something darker. You're smarter than I thought, she admitted. I leaned back. You underestimated me. She shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe I just didn't care enough to play it differently. I raised an eyebrow. Is that what happened to Daniel? You didn't care enough? Her smile widened. Daniel was weak. The way she said it, so effortlessly, so dismissively, made my stomach turn. You don't have a way out of this, I said, keeping my voice calm. Not this time. Sophia tilted her head. Maybe not. But neither do you. I frowned. What does that mean? She let out a soft laugh. Nathan, you think you're in control here? You think because you have some documents and a few bank statements that you've won? She shook her head. You don't get it, do you? I stayed silent, letting her talk. She leaned forward. You're already losing. I filed a report against you at your job, made a few calls to people who trust me a hell of a lot more than they trust you. As we speak, there's an official investigation into your erratic behavior. She smiled. I told them how you've been paranoid lately, how you've been acting unstable, how I'm worried about you. My jaw tightened. She saw it, and she laughed. See? You thought you were setting a trap for me, but I was already setting one for you. I forced myself to breathe, to stay calm. You won't get away with this, I said. She shrugged. I always do. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. She had never loved me, not in the way I had loved her. I had been a transaction, a target, a piece in her game. But she had made one mistake. She had underestimated how far I was willing to go. I stood slowly. Enjoy your wine, Sophia. I hope it helps you sleep tonight. She watched me, curious. Why? I turned to leave, pausing at the doorway. Because by tomorrow, everything you've built is going to come crashing down. Her smile faltered, just slightly, and I knew, for the first time, that she felt it. She was losing. The next morning, the real game began. Mark and Vanessa had already done their part. Vanessa had gone to the police with what she knew, connecting Sophia to Daniel's disappearance. My father had moved fast, blocking Sophia's access to my accounts and filing legal action against her fraudulent dealings. And me? I sat in my office at work, waiting for the inevitable. Sure enough, just after noon, my supervisor called me in. "Nathan," he said, looking concerned, "we need to talk." Sophia had done her best to paint me as unstable. She had filed a report claiming I was mentally unwell, reckless. But what she didn't know was that I had already spoken to HR. I had already provided them with documents proving her financial manipulation. I had flipped the script before she even got to write it. By the time I walked out of that office, I wasn't the one under investigation. She was. 2 days later, Sophia was arrested. Fraud. Financial crimes. A reopened investigation into Daniel's disappearance. She had always thought she was untouchable. But this time, she lost. And as I stood outside the courthouse, watching as they took her away, I finally felt it. Relief. I had survived. And for the first time in a long time, I was free.